This is section 1 for chapter 4. We're looking at parallel lines and planes. Two lines or parts of lines, like segments or rays, are parallel if these two things happen. The first thing is they can't intersect, which everybody's pretty much aware of that. The second thing is, it's what everybody usually forgets, they have to be in the same plane. So these two lines, notice how this one is drawn longer than this one. That has nothing to do with whether or not they're parallel. They're parallel because they're in the same plane and they don't touch each other. Now, even though they look parallel, you don't know for sure until they have these special marks on them. These special marks indicate that the lines are parallel. If you don't see those marks, you cannot assume that they are parallel unless they tell you this somewhere. This is telling you that line AD, that's the top one, is parallel to line BC. That's the bottom one. So when you see this, that's how you read it. Planes can also be parallel. In geometry, planes do not intersect. Planes that do not intersect are called parallel planes. So for example, if you think of this diagram as the room that you're sitting in, there are certain planes that are parallel. For example, the ceiling is parallel to the floor. Name the ceiling. You can name it a bunch of different ways, but I'm going to name it plane ABG. It's parallel to the floor. I'm going to name that plane CDE. And I'm going to say that those are parallel. Now, the front wall, I can name that a bunch of different ways too. I'll name it plane AGE. It's going to be parallel to the back wall. I'll call it plane BCF. Those are parallel planes. The other pair would be the left wall and the right wall. So I'll call the left wall plane ABC, and I'll call the right wall plane GEF. Here's the new thing. Sometimes lines that don't intersect are not in the same plane. These are called skew lines. So I'm going to list some examples for you. Line AB, that's this guy. It's skew with line GE. Think about what that means. These definitely don't intersect. This one's going this direction forever. This one's going straight up and down. This line right here is to the right of this line. So even though these lines go forever, they're going in different directions. They are not in the same plane. So they don't touch, and they're not in the same plane. That's an example of skew lines. I'll list another pair too. We'll say that this line EF is skew with another line. Maybe this one. This line AG. They don't touch each other, and they're not in the same plane. Notice how this line is on the ceiling and the front wall, and this line is on the floor and the right wall. That's an example of skew lines. Here's some examples. Name all planes parallel to plane ABC. That's the ceiling. Well, there's only one plane that's parallel to it. That's the floor. So name the floor. Plane FEH. All segments that intersect segment AB. So there's two segments that intersect at point A, and there's two segments that intersect at point B. So segment AE obviously touches this because they both have an A. Same thing with segment AD. Same thing with segment BF. and segment BC. Segments intersect if they share one of those letters. Number 3, all segments that are parallel to segment FG. Segment EF is clearly parallel to it. EH, rather. They're in the same plane. They don't touch. Also, plane BC is on the same plane as segment FG. They're on the back wall. They don't touch, so they're parallel. And there's one more. And it's easier to see. Think about what this one's parallel to. You could definitely see this one is. So segment AD is also parallel to that segment FG. It's a little bit tougher to see which plane goes through both of those. But there's a diagonal plane that would slice through this top front edge to the bottom back edge. Number 4, all segments that are skew to segment EF. So here's segment EF. Here's a great way to identify segments that are skew. We just spent some time identifying segments that touch a certain segment. Well, the segments that touch segment EF are not skewed to it. Also, the segments that are parallel to it are not skewed to it. So the yellow ones are not skewed to it, and the green ones are not skewed to it. Which ones are skewed to it? I'll try this purple. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's this one, this one, this one, and this one. Notice how it makes what looks like 2 7s. When you have a diagram like this and you're looking for all segments that are skewed to one of them, that's what your answer is going to look like. When you write all 4 segments, it's going to look like 2 7s or 2 backwards 7s, or 2 L's or 2 backwards L's. So that's planes that are parallel to a certain plane, segments that intersect other segments, segments that are parallel to other segments, segments that are skewed to other segments.